Hey guys, welcome to the second installment of the Chalky Talk series, What Highly Selected Colleges Really Want. Today we'll be talking about applications and essays specifically. I have a wonderful panel of guests with me, all of whom are going to Stanford but have a diverse range of experiences and were accepted to a multitude of schools. So let's just, first of all, let's just deal with some housekeeping duties. Again, just like last time, there's a Twitter widget on the right side of your screen, and you can tweet. This time, the tweet would be at Chalky Labs, and so you can tweet that with any questions that you have during this broadcast. And when you do, we'll be able to catch those and then answer them. Hopefully, as many as we can. Okay, so let's just get started by allowing this wonderful panel to introduce themselves. Let's start with you, Jennifer.
Okay, so I'm Jen. I went to Illinois Mathematics and Science Academy in Aurora, Illinois, so a suburb of Chicago. It's like a public boarding school. What else do you need to know about me? I got accepted to UChicago early, Stanford regular, and I also got accepted to Scripps College with their $20,000 scholarship.
Awesome, sweet. Jonathan.
Hi, my name is Jonathan. I went to West Ottawa High School, which is in Holland, Michigan. It's a pretty large high school with about 2,400 students. I was accepted to Stanford early and UPenn regular, and some of my extracurriculars include Science Olympiad, an organization called Cultural, Technological, Environmental Exchange, where we help people in Cameroon, and French Club, and National Honor Society. Yeah.
Sweet. Joseph, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Joseph. I'm also going to Stanford in the fall. I applied regular position everywhere. Besides that, I was accepted to Columbia, Pomona, which is a smaller liberal arts college, Middlebury, the University of Chicago, all the UCs, and a couple other schools. I went to boarding school also in California called Stevenson School. I'm an international student from Korea/Hong Kong. The things I did in high school include I'm a published writer. Actually, an anthology of my like a piece I wrote is being published in an anthology this fall in November. And I've also done a lot of other writing. I also do a lot of language, speech, and poetry recitation competitions. I do varsity track and field. I was the president of the Gay Straight Alliance, as well as the president of the Mall United Nations Club.
Cool. All right, how about you, Negan? Negan? Yeah.
All right, hi guys, I'm Negan. I'm from San Diego. I've been here for about 2 years. I came to the States about 4.5 years ago from Iran. So I guess I could have like the semi-international student experience, but not really. Went to high school here. First 2 years in the Bay Area, next to Stanford actually, got in high school, and then moved to San Diego for the next for junior and senior year of high school. I was really into debate, and so I have a lot of like policy, parliamentary debate experience. From that come things like outreach marketing, some experience like that in high school, and then I did a lot of like STEM internships in different engineering fields because I feel like that's a area which I hope to pursue, whether it's on the policy side or on the actual like medical side or engineering side. I don't know yet, but yeah, that's about it. So I'm excited.
All right, how about you, Vivian?
Hello all, my name is Vivian, and I went to Folsom High School in Folsom, California. It's kind of smallish, but not that small. And I applied early to Stanford, and I applied regular to UC Berkeley, UCLA, and UC Davis. And high school activities, I guess I was really involved with varsity track and field and varsity cross country. I went to the state meet for cross country. And I also was heavily involved with volunteering at my local library and working at their
Awesome. Okay, so clearly it appears that we have a diverse range of panelists today. Two international students, or I guess one with international experience, and then people from in-state, out-of-state, etc. So okay, all right. Let's get started with some of the questions that were asked of us previously through the sign-ups. The first one. Let's go with, what do you think is the most important part of the college admission process? So what do they actually look at the most? Does anyone want to take a stab at this? This is a question that we listed for all the panelists. So anyone who wants to answer it, just go ahead. Yep, go ahead.
Okay, so basically, for the most part, I think it's important for you to, obviously highlight your past accomplishments, like essentially the skills you've gained, how you've grown. But for me, I think it's most important for you to be able to communicate exactly, not just, through what you've grown or, that you're passionate, but why you have done something, why, like the list of things that you list in your application, why you've done them, why they matter to you, and why they should care that they matter, essentially. So it's much of a market, and your job is to, communicate that to the best of your abilities, and based on, how what you say to them, they're going to evaluate in the context of your past experiences and accomplishment, or in some areas, past inexperiences, just, as long as you can clearly and effectively express that you have a passion for something and that you are ready to arrive there and learn, and you express that how you are in the context of the resources that that specific university offers, how you intend to pursue that process. I think that's what's most important.
Right. Okay. Does anyone else want to jump in?
I mean, I guess, like, obviously you need, like, the stats to get in. Like, you can't, like, usually you won't get into, like, a highly selective college if you have straight C's or something. So, like, obviously, like, there's the academic part, but then beyond that, you have to make yourself stand out. And I think that's where Megan's, like, advice really comes to play.
I think the overall process is pretty holistic, so it kind of takes a lot of many different things that people need to do.
Sorry, Joseph, can we get you to speak a little louder?
Oh, sorry. I was just saying that basically I feel like the whole process is pretty holistic, so you kind of need to do well on all different aspects, but I think that basically the most important part of the admissions process is that you did your best at something you're passionate about, and your application properly demonstrates that you pretty much you tried your best, whatever your situation was, like whether you come from a privileged or non-privileged background, that you used all of your resources that you had readily available to you to do your best, and I think that's pretty important.
Okay, yeah. So definitely about the passion aspect and just doing your best and everything like that. But so I mean, how do you really show that through an application? Right? So how do you show your strengths and how do you show your best through a college application, right? So Vivian, do you want to take a stab at this? How did you show your the best side of you through your applications and essays?
Sure. So there's for example your GPA, your class rank, and such, your test scores. Those are kind of, you could think of it as numerical hurdles to kind of get up to go through. But even though you can't really, although you might not be able to jump over all of them, there's other aspects such as what you do, like your activities and stuff. But beyond all that, you have to kind of just convey your passion. You can show your commitment to things by what you do, how many hours you put in them, your awards, and how hard you've tried it. But also through your essays, you can kind of say just how committed and how passionate you are about what you like to do.
Right. Anyone else want to jump in?
I think another important part of that, Vivian mentioned essays. I feel like a lot of people make the mistake of saying I'm super passionate about this and just making statements. When I think the most effective way is actually to describe a certain incident really well that's specific to you, and just that it makes you feel more human than just you're BSing something. You say that you're interested in something when you're really not.
Can you give us an example of how you use that in your app? Or
Yeah, so for my Common App, I actually wrote about like my interest in science. So I've like personally, like this is what I guess would go in the brag sheet, like the extracurricular stuff. So I wrote listed how I did an internship with a biotech company for one summer and then researched at Northwestern for 2 years. But then how I made that really personal to me was in my Common App. So I linked that to, I guess, like throughout childhood, like how I would just go out with a scientific curiosity to whatever I did, and then kind of gradually move into like, incidences that I encountered while I was doing internships, not just saying that I did them, if that makes any sense.
Right. Yeah. So like show don't tell.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's something that's extremely important that I see a lot of applicants making, which is instead of saying that I'm really passionate about this, you should show it through something else, right? You should show it by actually using an anecdote or an example of how to do that. Does anyone else want to share their experiences in terms of how they really like demonstrated their passion or whatever it is through their essays?
I just want to add something. Sorry, Vivian. Go ahead.
Oh, well, I guess for me, like, running is still a really big part of my life, and I guess basically throughout my personal statement, and well, throughout my entire application, everything kind of centered around running because running was my life, and that was what I really liked to do. So then I would write about it, and kind of, you could, if you want to think about it in like English essay kind of terms, like, you can kind of phrase things and write about it in a way that kind of reflects what you're passionate about doing. So it kind of permeates throughout your entire application.
Yeah. Megan, how about you?
Oh, I just wanted to add something that it's good to highlight your strengths in the essays, and exactly as what you guys said, just pretty much like mention specific incidents and how they've grown you. But I also don't think people should be afraid to not necessarily highlight, but talk about their weaknesses, or essentially some things that didn't go as planned, and then either the reactions that they showed, not just what happened, that was obviously a negative thing that happened, but what they made happen in response to that, and also pretty much make that negative experience or weakness or whatever it is into a positive thing, so or at least something that you hope to improve yourself upon in the future. So for me, for example, debate for me was much more than just going there and kind of speaking fancy and all that, and doing your research about reading those magazines, all that. But it was at first I had like a language barrier totally, and so I wasn't confident at all. But I went through explaining how debate was an experience that made me be able to take risks and to accept that I might not be the best at something, but if I see a potential for greatness in that, then just move forward with it.
Yeah, I mean, I think you've hit it on a point that's extremely important. Where you can't. It's not enough to just write about negative experiences and how how much your life sucks or whatever it is, but more so like what admissions officers are really looking for is how you respond to those experiences, right? So, in your essays, I wouldn't take too long to get to the point to describe, what sort of situation and adversity you were facing, but I would take the majority of the time to actually to explain, how you dealt with that situation and demonstrate how you dealt with that situation, rather than just telling about how bad, the situation was. Okay, yeah, so does anyone else want to add to that, or should we move on to the next question? Nope? Okay, all right, so this question is, let's go to Jennifer for this question. So it's about the essay. Where online can you find good resources? Like, is College Confidential a good resource? And do you have any advice on choosing schools to apply to, like, early, or advice to fill out the best Common App with extracurriculars, awards, et cetera, et cetera?
Okay, so that's a lot. I'm going to start with the first thing. You're going to have to remind me what the other questions were. So, good resources online, I would say, was, I think, like, Chalky has some, actually. Like, you guys posted your essays, so definitely, like, reading other people's essays help a lot. I actually found, like, the most helpful things for me at my public library. So, like, they actually publish, like, books of successful essays, like Harvard, Princeton, Stanford, wherever. And so, like, just reading through that helped me a lot, just like getting a sense of what they're looking for in a college essay, because it really is totally different than like writing a school essay. College Confidential, I mean, there's like so much on there. I guess you could find something good. I generally like stuck with the library just because like that's published, that's like, legitimate, it's, so that's where I found the best kinds of essays that I could find. Also, asking people that graduated from your school for their essays, you can do that too.
Right. By the way, Jennifer mentioned that Chalky just recently implemented an essays feature, so that is true. And if you want to check out essays that, from recent admits to the class of 2017, go to www.chalky.co/essays, and you'll be able to find them there. So I really like the College Confidential comment. Does anyone else have any takes on the College Confidential system? Because I've heard various reviews about it. So I've heard one college admissions counselor say that they go on College Confidential to get a good laugh occasionally.
Yeah,
So
I feel like
how are your experiences with it?
I feel like College Confidential is pretty like, it can be like sort of biased sometimes because like the discussions always a lot of times like happen on a certain college's like questions. So I would like when I was trying to make my decision on which college to go to, I would feel like, oh, like Pomona versus like Middlebury, but I would be on the Pomona page, so obviously like people would be like wildly supporting Pomona. Like I was like, wow, this doesn't really help me in my like decision making process. So I feel like sometimes like it might be better to do your own research rather than like try and rely on like so many different opinions from so many different people. So yeah, that's my opinion.
Right. Okay. Anyone else or next question?
I actually have a book I think that I read that was pretty helpful. One was this is pretty general, not just for essays, but actually like pretty general, like the college application process as a whole, including financial aid. It's College Solutions by Lynn O'Shaughnessy, Lynn, and then I don't even know how to spell the last name, but so you should be able to find it out. It's pretty recent, and I think like there's 3 different editions, one new for this year. So I found out pretty helpful. Like as far as as Kevin, as Joseph said, it's a little biased on College Confidential. So this person actually tried her best, I guess, to really assess situations about schools and just like stereotypes a little objectively more so than subjectively. So I think it might be a good idea to take a look.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So let's go to a question about applying early. So I'm sure many of you did apply early. What do you guys think about applying early? And do you guys wish you knew something now today that you should have known back in October when you sent in that application? Or so who wants to take a stab at this first?
I'll go for it. So I applied to UChicago early on the recommendation of a counselor. So IMSS people talk to Ms. Yulia. She's really helpful. So she suggested that compared to Harvard, Stanford, Princeton, that are all REA, which is like restricted early action, UChicago is just plain EA. So you can apply to that and some other schools. But the reason why she suggested me to apply to UChicago instead of Yale, which was my first choice at the time, was because that she felt that it conferred more benefit to apply early to a school like UChicago than Yale. So Yale is like super, super selective. Generally, like the only people they pick from like the first round of early admits are like the people that they would normally admit during the regular decisions. Whereas UChicago is kind of like a really quirky school, so they're looking for self-selecting like applicants that would be more likely to like attend their school. So that's why I decided to apply to UChicago early. It also saved me a ton of trouble when I got my decision, because like I cut down my number of schools that I was applying to regular to I think like 2 or 3. So it saved me so much time, and everyone else was like freaking out. So it like gave me a little bit of like ease and relaxation during like that time.
Right. Did anyone else apply early to any schools?
So I applied early to Stanford because Stanford was my top choice, and it was kind of strategic in the sense that since I applied early to Stanford, I could be, since most of like the other schools, their deadlines would be kind of in the later months, like after you know if you got in via early decision, early decision. So then I only had to apply for Stanford and then the UC, since their deadline was November 30th. So then once I got the notification that I got in, I didn't have to spend the time and the extra cash to apply to a bunch of other schools, which was nice. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you think applying to Stanford early helped you? Because there's a lot of people say that applying early to schools, that there's often a more competitive pool. Most schools early they do accept more athletes, and then so even though the admissions rate is like many percentage points higher, you are competing against often the best, and you are competing against there's a lot of athletes and other prodigies, musicians that do skew the numbers. So do you think it benefited you? Like, do you think it was a wise choice to do that instead of applying regular decision?
I think it benefited me. It benefited me in the sense that I got it done early. So I started, since it's due earlier, I started earlier, so I had a bunch of more time to kind of edit and make sure that it was the best application I could make it. And also, I guess, although I have heard that it's kind of, a lot of the people who apply to like Stanford early are the people who really want to get in, and sometimes those are the people who are extremely qualified. But I think like it just kind of conveys that Stanford is your top and you really want to get in. So it combined with the time and the amount of commitment you're kind of conveying towards the admissions people that you really want to get in, it kind of outweighs. It's kind of a chance you have to take, I guess. But if it's your top, I suggest go for it.
Right. Okay. All right. Let's go to Jonathan on this one. So Jonathan, this is a question from Karen Beer, from the Twitter feed. So do you guys think that not focusing on the reasons you pursued one of your extracurriculars in your essay is detrimental? So, in other words, do you think that you really, it's necessary to write about the reasons you pursued one of your extracurriculars in your essays, or do you think, just you don't have to really write about that?
Well, I think it's important that you show your reasons why you did something, because it shows you have a passion for it and that you really want to go further with it and develop more of your knowledge at the college you're at and stuff like that.
Cool. All right. Anyone else want to add on to that?
I feel like, at least in my case, I feel like it's not necessarily like 100% necessity to write about like what you're super passionate about. At least that was like kind of my case, because like I sort of like incorporated things that I'm passionate about into my essays to some of them. But like some schools, like Columbia, for example, I wrote my supplemental essay on a YouTube video. So that had very little to do with my passions. I wrote my supplemental essay on a YouTube video about a guy who, and I guess it kind of connects to my extracurricular because I said I liked dance, but I basically wrote about how like there's a guy who dances on YouTube with people all over the world, and I think like dance is able to connect people all over the world, and like I was able to like get away writing an essay like that. It didn't. I feel like it doesn't necessarily have to be like just about like all your extracurriculars per se at the same time.
Right. Does anyone else want to answer that? Okay. Oh yeah. Megan, go ahead.
So for me, I guess like it's not necessarily that your extracurricular has to be something that you would, seriously like to pursue in the future, or it doesn't have to be the passion that you have, in life. But more so like if an extracurricular really has made you, grow a set of skills that are not just useful in that, in the context of that specific activity, but, that can apply to a broad range of activities or endeavors that, you will pursue in the future, then I strongly recommend writing about it, or at least like writing about how it has influenced you, like those specific aspects that it has, in order to be able to, really get yourself out there to the admissions officer, really talk less so about, skills that are very much like, oh, like I know how to program, I know how to debate, I know how to, do public speaking well, I know how to dance, but more so like I know how to take risks, I know how to talk to people, I know how to work with people, I know how to sell a product or a cause to a person. So if a extracurricular activity, even if you hated it, has showed you something like that, I would encourage that you do so. If not, if something else has, then like a YouTube video, the observation that you made about that, then that's great too.
Yeah, I definitely agree with Megan right here. It's not about like the activity itself, it's about how you've grown from it. So like even if you don't like write about like, it's like your essay shouldn't be like a brag sheet. I think that's like what the extracurricular like list is for. I think like you can incorporate it as examples of how you've like changed and grown as a person.
Right. So I think all of us wrote that essay. What was it? Was it like 100 words or something? 1,000 characters. The extracurricular essay for the Common App. Does anyone want to share their, what they wrote on that? I can share mine, after you guys do it. So. I'm sure there were some really quirky things that you guys wrote about. So who wants to go first?
Yes, I wrote mine on public speaking. So I guess in my case I was kind of like a quietish kid back in the good old days, and I guess doing public speaking, it allowed me to change and grow, and I guess that kind of supports what everyone else has been saying, is what that activity kind of allowed me to change and grow as a person and with new skills, I guess. So yeah.
Public speaking. I should remember that. Okay. Anyone else? Joseph, let's go to you.
Oh, okay. I don't remember which one. One of them I wrote about like. For Stanford, I wrote one about like cross-dressing actually, and dance. So that was an essay, and then I wrote another essay for Model UN, and I think my essay started with like my essay started with like a sentence that went like, at age 16 I started working with the Mexican drug cartel. So so yeah, because that's what I did. That's what I did for Model UN at the Stanford conference, actually, and I won an award for working with the drug cartel. So yeah, so pretty diverse there.
Okay. All right. How about you, Jonathan? What did you write about in your extracurriculars essay?
I wrote about Science Olympiad and participating in that, and I wrote about how science was no longer more about making the grade. It was more about working together with people who loved science and working together as a team to accomplish something rather than thinking about ourselves just as individuals and working towards our own pursuits, and how that helped me grow as a person.
So what exactly is, just for people who don't know, what exactly is Science Olympiad and how can you get involved in it?
Science Olympiad is basically a competition of sorts where you can participate in various science-related events. In some events you may have to build things, and then there are other events where you just take tests on various subjects. I personally was involved in the events of anatomy, and think biological events, basically. And you can get involved perhaps by asking your school to start a program if they don't have one yet, or join the existing one if there is.
Awesome. Okay, cool. Anyone else want to share their extracurricular essay before?
I guess I could touch upon it. For the Common App, I wrote, this might be like repetitive, but I actually wrote about a different aspect of it. Like, I wrote about debate and basically how back at like in Iran, we pretty much like learned to really, they taught us to think that we were always right. Like, one view that they always taught us was like the right thing, the one answer. And so debate was like one experience that really taught me to like, acknowledge that there are opposing views, even if you disagree with them. And so I just talked about, how that really could, be a potential positive facet to have as a person going into, the intellectual community in the future. So yeah.
So I wrote about it's like a school-specific kind of program. It's called the LEAD program. And so I wrote about how that kind of made me grow as a person, not just learning the theories, but also applying that to my own life. So it's a little hard to explain to someone who doesn't go to IMSA, but basically kind of showing that, like, through creating curriculum about leadership theory, social entrepreneurship, and social policy, that in turn made me kind of introspective about my own choices and my own beliefs.
Cool. Okay. So for myself personally, what I actually wrote about was basketball. So for the last 9-10 years, I've played basketball on a competitive level. And the reason I wrote about it, and the reason I think it was good, is because basketball was one of those things where I really did have to work for, right? And I demonstrated that in my essay. What I basically talked about was how from the beginning I was all right, but there was always that stereotype, oh, he's Asian, right? And then there were other challenges that I did have to encounter, right? And I was good at it, but I wasn't great at it, right? So other things like school, that was pretty easy. I generally didn't have too much trouble, but what I was really able to show through my extracurricular essay was that I was extremely passionate about basketball. Like, I loved basketball more than anything else, for a very long time. And even though I wasn't very good at it, I followed through with it, and I demonstrated a lot of perseverance and all that stuff, right? So I think it's really important. I think it's really important for someone to do something and really love doing something that they aren't necessarily good at, to just because you can learn so much from it. And that's what I wrote about in my essay. So yeah, that's just my essay. Anyone else?
I just want to clarify.
Yeah, Joseph, go ahead.
My essay was it sounds like my essay was really just really funny, but I did have an intellectual spin. I just want to clarify that I wrote basically about how easy corruption was in the world, and how I was able to get an award for being corrupted, and how it's a personal choice of integrity. And so yeah, I just wanted to clarify that it wasn't all jokes the whole day.
Okay. All right. So do you think you took a risk on that essay?
I took a risk.
How important do you think it is to take a risk?
Wait, is this for me, right?
Yeah, it's for you.
I think my essays were pretty risky, actually. My whole application was pretty risky because first of all, I was I do a lot of activism for LGBT stuff, and I was really open about that. So I feel that was kind of controversial. I feel like it is. Maybe it's because I'm Korean that I think this. But I thought it was controversial to be so open about that to begin with. But I think it's okay to take risks as long as you tone it down. I don't know. I did okay. I made sure it wasn't too much. I made sure yeah.
Great. Anyone else?
I mean, I guess you have to kind of take risks, otherwise your essay's not going to be like super interesting. I'm trying to actually find my Common App. Like the first sentence that I opened my Common App like essay was the corpse lay there pinned in a pool of blood. So obviously like that kind of like it has a shock factor to it. I guess that risk kind of paid off. So not necessarily like my topic was anything risky, but just the way that I wrote about it, I don't know, paid off. I showed it to a bunch of teachers, and they thought it was really like startling, but also like attention grabbing.
How about you, Megan?
I don't think my topics were particularly, risky, but I do think that you should write about a risky topic if you want to convey about yourself that you are a person who, takes risks, but, not just any risk, like, reasonable risks. And so yeah, if you are like, if that's part of your personality, I think it's great. Like the topic itself, the whole essay can be, definitely a way to convey that. And if the university, doesn't appreciate that, then, maybe you're not meant to go to that school. Like, so if that is a part of you, I will say, in all, go for it. But it's not necessarily part of me, to go out and, take any risk any day. So I didn't, and I wouldn't say that the majority of people should with their topic, specifically controversial. But, in the case of Joseph, obviously, it paid off, and it's part of who he is. And, so that's great.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I think you touched upon a really interesting point there. That is, if you do take a risk and it's really like it's truly you, because that's who you are, right? And like I wouldn't suggest taking a risk just for the sake of taking a risk, just to appear risky, right? Like if you're gonna take a risk, make sure that's really who you are, right? But if you do that and the school doesn't like that, then you probably wouldn't fit in that school anyways, right?
Yeah.
So. But on the topic of risk-taking, one of my Stanford intellectual vitality essays was actually about me jumping off a jungle gym when I was like in grade 2, just because I was testing gravity or something. But like stuff like that. And I used that, I spin that, and I talked about how that really just demonstrated my natural curiosity for the world. Like I didn't take anything for granted, and I wanted to test everything that presented to me. So I think that on the topic of taking risks, you should definitely, if you are a risk taker, if you do like taking risks, and if that's a part of your personality, definitely write about it.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyone else want to talk about that specifically, or we can move on? Okay. Yeah. Let's go to this one. Wait, sorry, Jonathan. I think there's some feedback coming from your side. Can you?
Yeah, I'm sorry about that.
Yeah, no problem. Okay, that's fine. All right. So let's go to this question. Does my background or ethnicity or any other features affect my application?
That was for me, right?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Well, I don't think your ethnicity should matters too much to the college, but they definitely want to promote diversity. And if there are two similar candidates, then they'll probably favor the one that will add to their pool of diversity. And maybe some people will see that as unfair, but it's what they want in their college.
Yeah. I think Joseph, you probably have some stuff to add on to that in terms of the background, and background, ethnicity, everything. Like as an international student involved in the LGBT community, et cetera. So, what do you think? Do you think it affected your application? Do you think it was a plus or a minus?
Well, for the LGBT part, like I felt like it was a big part of who I am. So I felt like like Nejin said earlier, like I kind of felt like for that at least, like I wanted to be clear with my identity and who I was. And like if the university didn't like that, like like too bad. I know I can do great. But as far as like ethnicity or background goes, like being Korean and being an international student from Korea, like I mean, I feel like it affects like your like admission chances, like because they take a lower amount of international students, and because you're like competing with everyone around the world, like, and because like most Korean students that I know are studying from like 8 a.m. to like 12 a.m. the next day, like it's gonna be a little tougher. Like like people around me from Korea like acted like it was a miracle. So so yeah, I mean like I feel like it does affect it, but like race or like ethnicity or citizenship, that's not something you can change. And so I guess in the end, like my point is, it's not really something you can change. So don't worry too much about it. Just try your best.
Right. Okay. All right. So let's go to a question that was from a viewer. So Tide Carey asks, who should I have look at my essays to evaluate, to edit and evaluate them? So I think that's really important, especially on the topic of essays, and that right now we're gearing up into essay season. So, all right. So who wants to take a stab at that first?
I would suggest asking your teachers, or kind of more specifically your English teachers, if not for your ideas and what you want to write about, if for grammatical, and make sure it all is structured neatly, and it kind of, and also in respect to your word count, they can really make sure and kind of help you make sure you're not being too wordy, or you can flesh things out a bit more. And a word of caution with asking your friends to read it, sometimes they like to be really nice, so if you want a kind of critical eye, I think it'd be good to ask your teachers.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, in terms of the grammar, there's nothing that's worse than having a grammar mistake in your essay when you're applying, right? That's so super avoidable, and it's even if the rest of the essay is great, it just detracts from it so much. All right, so Megan, I think you had something to say.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything that Vivian says, but adding on to the English teacher, some friends can be nice. That's usually like the friends that are like good friends, but they're not your best friends. I actually gave mine, to my English teacher, and to two of my best friends, and then to one of the people that, didn't quite actually, I guess they didn't have the best impression of me as a person, and so. And so, I just like, I just wanted to, see through different eyes, like what this essay would, give to them if they didn't know me, and then if they did know me, like based on, obviously all the impressions that I had given them so far, is that accurate? And so I got actually pretty interesting comments, and, it actually just don't give them to too many people, but I actually recommend giving to them to a bunch of people, and then doing as many frequent edits as possible, and so writing as many drafts as possible instead of working on it like for days and days to make that big change that person X suggested. But yeah, give it to a wide variety of audience that have different impressions of you, or perhaps have evaluated you in various contexts. So like from the teacher academic context to as far as best friends, as far as a fellow person that you worked with on Science and Olympiad, or like at a research lab or something, and it should be pretty good by the end.
Right. Okay. So Jennifer, how many drafts did you write?
How many drafts? So I think actually, all the admitted schools, I had written maybe 4 different kinds of just jotting down ideas, but the ones that actually got me in were the ones that I wrote the day that they were due. So I don't know, obviously that doesn't work with everybody, but for me it really worked, just because then I wasn't hyper editing it, it just came out of me. It wasn't something I was trying to fit into a mold or something. So at this point, I agree with Megan, is don't edit it too much that it doesn't become yourself anymore, or that it misrepresents you. So total I had maybe a group of 4 people that edited my essays, maybe 2 on each essay. So like I gave two to alum, or like people who were who just graduated 1 year above me, one to an English teacher, and also my essays to my roommate, because she kind of knew me in that kind of context. So definitely like getting different perspectives matters. So definitely like don't over edit, like so then you're becoming other people, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, that's that's really true for me as well, because for the extracurricular essay that I was talking about on basketball, that was really the only essay that just I wrote it in 30 minutes and then I never touched it, right? And I think that was one of the strongest parts of my application. So I think like the best essays, I mean, you know, write about something that you really love, right? Write about something that you really want to talk about, and if you do, then I don't think you'll have to write too many drafts, right? You might have to do a lot of, you know, grammar changes and stuff like that, but you know, whole entire makeovers of an essay, you can limit that. So you know that helps you manage your time in senior year as well. So just like, it sounds cheesy, but just write about something you love, right? So Joseph, you want to talk any more about that, or Jonathan?
Sure. I think like I feel like this is pretty true. Like you can't make your essay like someone else's essay. But I think like as a writer, a lot of people, like I encounter this at least a lot. Like people like all have their subjective opinions of like what's good and what's not good. Like there are people who don't like Ernest Hemingway. So I feel like to some extent like in the end, like I feel like what you have to keep in mind is that you're the writer, and people will make you suggestions when you give it to them to read, but like whether you actually make those edits or not, like that's your choice. So like I actually had my essays like read by a ton of people actually, but I didn't necessarily like use all of their advice. Like in some cases I just kind of like overrode them and I was like, nah, I don't like your advice, like next person. And like some cases I was like, I like it, because I feel like at the end of the day you have to be happy with your own essay, because you know, like if I'm not happy with my own essay, then you know, like then that's not really the point. So I feel like you have to have the jurisdiction on your essays, but it's also good to get advice from friends or people you consider to be good writers or alumni. You know, if you know people who work as writers, like all the better.
Yeah,
I think another thing. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead. Sorry.
So I think another thing, like, we're talking like one essay, like what can you improve on one essay? But I think like for me, retrospectively, I think the important part is also like you're going to be writing a lot of essays. For Stanford, there's like 3 supplemental ones in addition to your Common App one, and like I was waitlisted at Yale, and I think the reason why was because that essay that I wrote was really similar in meaning to my Common App essay, so it didn't like portray multiple sides of who I was. Whereas Stanford, I guess, kind of forced me to write about things that that weren't related to my Common App at all. So kind of going in line with the very first question, like what's most important in an essay, is that you kind of create this holistic demonstration of yourself, like who you are, and that can be reflected through your essays. So not only think about like how well you're writing and like who's editing it and whatever, but also think of like what you want your reader to get away from a certain essay, and try to, you know, cover all your bases, like who you are, academic interests, whatever.
Yeah, definitely. And like about the essay, you know, whereas the award section, your grades, your SAT scores, your other scores, that should really demonstrate, you know, how capable you are, sometimes how smart you are. But you know, you should really take the time, if you're going to write about an academic topic on your essays, you should really use not to write about how smart you are, or you know, how great you are at something, but really like what you learned from it, and or use it to demonstrate a side of your personality that you can't just see on paper or grades, right? So, you know, for example, if you went to the prestigious science fair, or you know, you're a math Olympiad finalist or something like that, I wouldn't write about using that to show how smart you are, but you know, if you want to write about that, use it to demonstrate your passion in the field, or something quirky about you that people wouldn't know in terms of, you know, in relation to that. So yeah, definitely. Okay, so this is a question that was just brought up Monday briefly. So let's go into it in a bit more depth. So in terms of essays, did you guys look at a prompt first and then write the essay, or did you guys have an essay in mind that you really wanted to write and then just fit it with the prompt afterwards? And what do you think is the best way to do that?
For
I
me,
feel like
sorry.
go for it.
Oh, sorry. Like in my case at least, like I wrote essays basically for the prompts I thought were interesting, and then I kind of recycled them for other universities. So like I thought this is the truth. I thought University of Chicago had like a really I love their like essay prompts. They always have really quirky and funny ones, and so that was like really enjoyable for me to write. So I wrote an essay on like who are your enemies basically. And I basically I really liked my essay that I wrote, and so I ended up just like for a lot of other schools, I just kind of like adapted it to fit the prompt to some extent. I applied to like this is gonna sound intense, but I applied to like 19 schools, so like I had to save my time, like so that's what I did, and I think it worked pretty well at the end of the day.
Yeah. Does anyone else want to talk about that? Did anyone here write their essay first and then just fit it to a prompt?
Go ahead, Vivian.
For me, I kind of had like an idea of what I wanted to write about because I had an incident earlier in my life that I was like, if I didn't write about this, then I'd be lying myself into death. So that was kind of, I knew I was going to write that for sure. And of course, kind of like the Common App and the other essay questions, a lot of them were kind of quirky and kind of specific, but a lot of them were kind of universal in the sense that you're just trying to find out who you are. So you could have like kind of an idea in the back of your head of like, okay, this particular idea or this particular incident is a really good essay topic that I would want to write about. And it might also turn out that the essay questions that you can choose from, they're also matched what you already have in the back of your head. So it just kind of works out.
Right.
I don't know. I feel like this is kind of like a personal thing, like a personal preference. So like for me, I'm like really like prolific writer, so I just like boom, 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 like all these different drafts, and then see like which idea had most potential, and then like started matching it up. But I guess like for some other people, like if it makes you feel more comfortable or you write better based on a prompt, like that also works. So I think this is more like you kind of have to feel for yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. I mean, just a little bit more about Joseph's point. Like I only applied to 6 schools, but even though I only applied to 6 schools, I only wrote like 3 essays, like 3 main essays, right? And I wrote a bunch of small ones. So yeah, like if you're proud of one of your essays, and generally you can just recycle them, a lot of them across multiple universities. It might not have been the best idea now that I think about it, but you can always use an essay more than. Yeah, as long as it's not like a specific supplemental essay that's really quirky. Okay, so let's talk about recommendations. Oh wait, hold on. Yeah, okay, yeah, let's talk about recommendations. So, what do you guys think about recommendations? Did you guys, did you guys get 2, or did you guys get more? And how do you guys think that helped you?
I guess for me, I only had 2 people, and well, including my counselor, if you want to count the counseling recommendation. But for me personally, I just didn't want to bother too many teachers in the writing about me. But also, you kind of have to be strategic about it because, well, I guess also in the case that I applied early decision, I had to ask my teachers earlier, so there wasn't really a big wave of people trying to attack your teachers getting recommendations. So in terms of recommendations, be sure to ask your teachers early, figure out which one you want to ask, and in terms of picking which one you want to ask, not only teachers but other people, and someone who knows who you are, beyond what you do, so kind of personally, how you are.
Yeah, definitely ask your teachers. If you guys started school a week ago or 2 weeks ago, right now would be a great time to start talking to your teachers about it, just because they're busy and everything like that. So, yeah. So, what sort of teachers did you guys ask? Did you guys ask for teachers that were from different sort of disciplines, like one sciencey, one not sciencey, and things like that, or how did you guys approach that?
So for me, yeah, I obviously like I chose one in the science math, particular for me it was my biology teacher, and then I asked one from my humanities just because I applied to MIT early, and that's basically what they encouraged me to do. Although it was more of a tech school, but I guess they really, all these top tier universities really want you to see you and your thinking and just like how you like to learn in multiple dimensions and multiple aspects. And so I think it's really important for people to be able to comment on that. And I think as Vivian touched on, it's really important to be also getting to know you as a person, just completely free and separate from the set of professional skills that you have, which are probably going to be like useful when you're applying for a job, but applying for college is a little different than applying to a job, because they're giving you, an environment to learn and, improve yourself for 4 years, and then you're probably giving back, something to them in the long run that's going under their name. So, yeah, I would say people that just have, multiple perspectives of you, and on the note of, asking about, like, let's say you have a research mentor and, you did quite a bit of research with them, but if they really, like, don't have that much to comment on about you, and if you're not necessarily sure from, as at least in my opinion, that you want to, pursue a specific field of research, that matches that the work that you did with that professor, then I mean I would say it just shows how like insecure essentially you are about yourself, and that you weren't comfortable enough with the people that already commented on your skills, abilities, and your persona. So I would just go with as few as you think really reveal the maximum amount of things about you as possible.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Anyone else?
Definitely. All right. So yeah, Dennis said like ask early. Definitely do that, because like one of my teachers who I asked her kind of late, and she actually had like a cap of like the number of students she was going to recommend. But for what Vivian said, like you gotta have like someone who recommends you beyond just like, oh, she got an A in this class, or she does really well on every test. Someone that knows you as a student, like the learning process. So the two teachers I asked, I did independent studies with, and so we were just kind of like really chill. I don't know, like just kind of like friends, and that was a lot more meaningful, I think, than asking a teacher who I got straight A's in or anything like that. Also, yeah, like don't overdo it with the recommendations. Like colleges don't want to see like a stack of envelopes. Yeah, because like what Megan said, like that shows insecurity. Just go with as many things you need.
I totally agree actually with what Jen says, just because like about like not necessarily choosing the classes you got an A in, because I actually got my recommendation in a class where like, so basically what happened is I got a C- on my first test, but I ended up getting an A- for the term. So like it was kind of a class where like I worked, it was for math, for calculus, and I started out like really not doing so well. But I was like at the beginning of the term, like after I got the test, I was like, I'm gonna show you that I can do better. And and like I became like really close to my teacher, but also like I think like I asked him because even though like math isn't my forte, just because I felt like he knew me like as someone who could like stand up from like a serious like or like a setback, and I thought that like actually helped a lot more than than anything else.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the rec that I got that I thought was the most compelling for my application was actually from a teacher who, who taught me American history and then taught me economics. But more importantly, he also was the supervisor for the Model UN, and what happened was at the end of my junior year, he actually recommended an author to me because we always had discussions on economics and stuff like that. So he recommended an author to me that really, sort of changed my way of thought and the way I viewed the world, right? And so even though it wasn't necessarily aligned with his, and so like if you have that teacher that you can really treat as like almost like a mother or father figure, and that you do have profound discussions with, and that really played a pivotal role in your development, not just as a student, but as a person, and that they know that they did, right? Then they can really write a truly compelling account of your person, right? So you can think of that as like another personal statement for you, if you can find a teacher that does that, right? Rather than just a teacher that says, this guy's the best student I've had in 40 years. Yeah, but there's applying to these schools, there's a lot of best students that they've had in 40 years, right? So yeah, that's just my take on it in terms of recs. So,
and sideline, if you're ever in doubt, just like straight up ask your teacher. Like, usually they'll want the best things for you, and if they don't feel comfortable writing a superb essay for you, they'll let you know. So just be like, hey, do you think you would be able to write something to recommend me to Stanford or wherever you want? And they'll usually give you an honest answer.
Yeah. Yeah, and exactly, and about that, don't be afraid to ask your teacher to eat. Like, they're busy. They probably teach a lot of students. Don't be afraid to give them a list of things that you want them to touch upon. Especially if you're close to them and things like that. Like, if you really want your teacher to talk about this experience that you had with them, then put that in the document and send that off to them in an email, because you don't want them to forget that, right? And in the end, like they'll probably happily include that. And it's actually better for them that you give them something that they can work off of, right? Even so, just don't be afraid to
I'll get the shovel.
All right. Anyone else want to talk about recommendations while we're at it? Did anyone get any outside like music, arts recommendations or specific research recommendations like that?
I actually sort of did. I didn't want to say anything, but yeah, I did, just because like I have an interest in like foreign language, and I know Chinese / learned Chinese, but my school doesn't have a program in that, so I actually took it outside of class, and I worked with a college professor. And I just wanted that recommendation just because like I wanted there to be like something that shows that this is something I really love, even though it's not something my school has a part of, or like I don't have the resources to like really demonstrate it. So like that was kind of the way I decided to show that.
Cool. Okay. Anyone else?
I did get Go ahead.
Go ahead, Jen.
I did get one other recommendation from my research advisor. I think like what made me choose him and why he, I guess, wrote a really good rec was because like I was like the first high school research kid he'd ever took on, and he was, I guess, pretty impressed with me. I worked really hard at it, and I guess he knew me in a context besides just like learning and that kind of stuff. So.
Cool, yeah, I did too, but I actually ended up not sending it just because, I don't know, my biology teacher said that, I don't know, I had talked to her about, some research interests and outside things, and she had kind of incorporated that into my rec letter. But I was actually going to say something else while we're at it, that, pick the teachers that can comment on your this sounds cliche, but really on your future potential. So they can like let that reader, that college admissions officer, know what you're gonna be like in the context, and on the campus of that university, and not just how you were inside their class, because they're worlds apart. And so if you just ask a teacher that can comment on you inside their class, that's part of every application essay. Obviously, is part of your evaluation, but make sure that they can do much more. They can say much more than that.
Right. Okay, great. So if anyone has any last words, just feel free to say them. But we are winding down. It is nearing 1 hour now. So if anyone wants to say anything, nope. Okay. All right. So I guess this concludes the second installment of the series, What Highly Selected Colleges Really Want, on applications and essays. Thank you very much for watching this, and next Monday we'll be hosting another series, another installment of the series, which will be on scholarships specifically. So I know there were some questions on the Twitter feed about scholarships, and next week we'll have Koch scholars, Questbridge scholars, and other major scholarship winners will be joining us on the Chalky Talk series. So Thank you very much for all of the panelists and all the viewers out there that are watching, and we hope you have a great night.